Welcome to the Dad Show Podcast, a show all about impacting, empowering, inspiring, and uplifting information to become a better dad, husband, man, and mentor. And now, your host, Ryan Ladd.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I want to thank you for listening and for watching. I'd like to ask that you would leave a review and subscribe, as well as follow along and engage with us on all social media at The Dad Show Podcast and online at thedadshowpodcast.com. I'm really excited about today's show. I've got Mr. Dan King, who was my first captain, who has been a huge inspiration. He's one of my best friends and been a big mentor in my life. And I can honestly say where I'm at in my career today is 99% because of him. So, Dan, I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for having me on your show, The Dad Show. So I'm going to ask you the question. What's inspired you to start The Dad Show?
So obviously you worked with me at FIREMAN and grew up with me, and I wasn't the best male figure as a dad or as a husband or, just a good all around man. I was, just being a young guy. And so through my kid's diagnosis, we've seen some terrible stuff in the hospital, some kids that never had dads show up, and just listen to other stories throughout that storm that we went through just made me want to become a better man, a better husband, and a better dad.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, we did work together for a long time. A little bit about me, the Fireman Dan, worked in the fire service, still do. That's how I met Ryan. Was in the fire service, had a lot of good times in the fire service.
We had a lot of good times.
See, some things we can't talk about, I guess, on this show, but it was fun. And this is fun. I think we've, looking back at that time, I think we've evolved. Who would have thought that we'd be sitting here talking about dad stuff?
I agree 100%. I mean, I remember some trips to some UT games and Vegas. And
yeah, I'd hate to be their dad.
Yeah, exactly.
I enjoy being a dad just as much as I do a firefighter. I've got 3 kids, and the first 2 coming this world had issues. We were in the hospital quite a bit, so I definitely can feel what you're going through. And I wish I had this podcast when I was going to the hospital.
Yeah, definitely.
My kids were in the hospital. There really wasn't much there. So, and you just mentioned that at the hospital that there wasn't dads there.
Exactly.
And I didn't even think about that until you just mentioned it. I mean, we stayed in the ICU, for almost a year, and it was just grandparents and moms. There were very few dads.
Whether the dads are back home working and, providing for the family while the caretaker, the mom, is, in the hospital. But, for the most part, those kids suffer because they need that male figure in their life to be their mentor, to look up to.
Yeah. Yeah. Each person has their own situation, but yeah, there's dads are really needed at this point. And I would have never thought I'd been sitting here asked to talk about being a dad. I definitely talk about being a firefighter, but, I'm definitely not the professional dad by any means. So,
well, none of us are. None of us are perfect. So that's the main reason for this podcast, is try and get dads together, dads talking. And I remember going through my kid's transplant at Cincinnati. We couldn't eat in their room. So there was one main room where all the dads, basically the families were supposed to go, but the kids were so young that the moms would go at one time and the dads would go at another. And so fellowshipping with those dads and hanging out with those guys in that kind of setting and, just fellowshipping with each other and listening to each other's stories, it just made you grow as a man for one, but it also made you grow as a husband and a father while you're in the hospital with your kids. And it helped with our treatment. And so that's what this podcast is for, is to bring dads together. Let's talk. And let's just put it out there, in our society, it's not cool to be a good dad. And so that's what I want to do, is bring us together to make it better all the way around.
No, I think dads in this world today, we can get caught up in so many other distractions and our own selfish ways. When we're off from work, it's my time, not my kids' time.
Exactly.
I've just learned that being a dad is intentional. You have to make the time. Everything that you do with your kids has to be intentional. And I feel like I've grown as a parent doing that. It takes work.
Amen.
Yes. And you have to you have to put your own selfishness aside. But I think all dads that bring kids into this world want the best for them. And I think the best for them is giving them that time.
Exactly. So, being in their life. You don't even have to do anything special. Just show up and be there and listen and play with them. That's really.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wasn't the best parent for the first couple of years, but I've got 2 kids that are grown, and then we've got an 8-year-old. And it's totally different raising a kid now than it was then. I mean, there's more money in the house. We're just more mature. My kid that's at home now gets away with a whole lot more than my other 2 kids would have ever gotten away with. And it's really not fair, because my other 2 kids were the ones that come into this world that were in the hospital for a year. I was probably harder on them than I was my 8-year-old.
So let's put it into perspective for our audience. So you've got Davis, which is at home now. He's 8. And then you've got 2 other kids, Reagan and Corbin. And how old are they?
Reagan is 27. She's my oldest daughter. Reagan was born right at 6 months early.
Wow.
She didn't even weigh 1.5 pounds.
Wow.
When she come out of the hospital, they told us that she was the smallest kid that weighed, how can I put this? She weighed less than any other kid that's ever left the hospital at that time. Now, I'm sure other people have, but I mean, literally, she looked like a squirrel in my hand.
Wow.
Right at 9 months, she was in the hospital. And then we brought her home. And at that point, I'm not going to tell my age, but I'm not a spring chicken, but it would look like antique medical equipment that beeped and everything. And we were just kids. And
in museums now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be in museums now, yeah. And that stuff was beeping all the time. And how we made it through that, I don't have a clue. Financially, mentally, it was just, I look back on it now and you just got to laugh. So, but I've my oldest son, who is 21, just turned 21 years old. He's in college. He's David Lipscomb University in Nashville, Tennessee. He's part of the basketball program there. He's one of their student managers, living the dream. Wakes up every morning with a cafeteria with whatever he wants to eat. I talked to him last night. He was just kicked back, said he just ate his dessert. He was going to bed. Has no worries. I mean, I would love to be in his shoes right now.
Definitely. Yeah. Because we didn't grow up with nothing like
that.
No,
we did not grow up with anything like that. Yeah. When I was in college, it was lucky if another roommate had a Pop-Tart in the cabinet, it didn't last too long.
Some ramen noodles were laying around.
Yeah. And it got so bad that everybody wrote their name on that Pop-Tart. Yeah. So it didn't.
Kind of like living in the firehouse, ain't it?
That's like living in the firehouse. Yeah. Well, except living in the firehouse. If it's got somebody's name on it, you don't eat it because somebody's messed with it, and you better leave that alone. So, but yeah, being a dad's fun. It's challenging. And as I get older, I think I've mellowed out just a little bit, and I understand the importance of being a dad. When I grew up, my dad, I mean, it was all work, no play. There was we never heard "I love you." We never heard things like that. And I'm not complaining about that. I grew up on a big farm, and my dad worked on the railroad. He wasn't there very much, but you sometimes in life you learn what you didn't have that makes you a better dad.
Exactly.
But now there's a whole lot of times that you want to go back to seeing what your dad did, and you have to focus and say, no, I'm not going to be that dad.
Yeah.
So there's things that, there's some good things that I took from my dad from growing up. And then there's a lot of things that I would never put in play today. So.
And that's part of it too. I mean, talking to dads, you're like, yeah, I would like to pick that trick up, or I'd like to do that. And then you're like, no, I don't want to do that, aspect. So if you could go back to your younger self with Corbin and Reagan, what would you do differently, I guess, as being a father then? I mean, obviously you were great and they turned out to be really good kids. But what would you, from yourself, from your point of view, what would you go back and change?
I'm really fortunate, and I love the fire service. It's given so much to me. I would have never met you.
Exactly.
We wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for the fire service. So I'm very fortunate to have worked a career where I could bring my family in. I mean, you saw my 2 oldest kids grow up.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I could go back and change anything, And I'll speak just a little bit about my faith. My faith is, I grew up in church, and it was Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. Anytime the doors were open, we were there. It was the only recreation that we had. And I've tried to live my life with my kids. Maybe not, we didn't go Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night, but we were there. And if I could go back and do anything differently, I would be in church a little bit more. So even though my kids turned out and they're in church today, that's a critical time in kids' lives, is that, and if you can, the more you can keep them, going down the right path, listening to good stuff, not bad stuff, and what you would hear in church, you can't go wrong with that.
And obviously having them in church is not going to just make them, become this great person and great child, and they're going to grow up to, be standing on a pedestal for everybody. Yeah. But, it does help having that faith in God and letting him lead your life. And all of us make mistakes continuously. But you're right. It does help to lead that faith and walk that line a lot better.
Yeah. And I'm definitely grateful for, at that time, having them in church as much as I did. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't every time the doors were open, but, it was enough where it made a difference in their life.
So you talked about us working at Harriman a little bit. So guys, I want to give you a little context into that aspect. I started in the fire service when I was 20 years old, and I'm now 35 years old. So I've been in the fire service for 15 years. And basically, as soon as I started, I didn't have any prior training or anything, but Dan took me right under his wing. He was my captain, and I was at Harriman for 6 years, I believe. I think it was 6. Anyhow, and I can tell you to this day, this man has been a great inspiration and has, I can say that where I'm at today in the fire service is because of Dan and the way he led me, the way he inspired me, the way he pushed me. I mean, I don't think that I'd ever lifted a weight in my life whatsoever. And then we went to the weight room. Dan's like, no, you're going to work out. Like, if you're going to be on my shift and you're going to be with us, you're going to work out. And so he pushed me to start working out, and I've put on the quarantine 15 here. So I don't exactly look like I used to when I worked back at Harriman, but we would every shift, even off shift, Dan and I would get together, go work out, go hang out. And through that, was a mentor. I didn't really realize it at the time, and I'm sure he didn't either. It was just a friendship, but it gave me somebody to really look up to and want to be like throughout my whole career. So Dan kept pushing me. I wanted to go to Iraq. I wanted, as a firefighter with a contractor there, I wanted to go to New York and be a fireman there. And, but I never made any of these decisions, without consulting Dan first. I would always go to his office, and I'm sure he got tired of me showing up and everything, but I'd go and say, hey man, help me out. What do you think about this? What do you know about this? And so any training that I've had, any certifications, anywhere I'm at in my life, I can basically just say that this man helped me get there for sure in one way or another. So I'm very, very happy to have him on the show today and hopefully to inspire you all just like he's inspired me.
Well, I appreciate those kind words. I can admit now, Ryan, that I didn't know what I was doing when you come on. So I was just winging it, man.
We did good though, didn't we?
We did good. Yeah.
Saved a bunch of cats.
Cats. Yeah. That was, it's funny that we sit here and talk about that. As I was driving over here, I was thinking, I had to drive back through the same town that I worked in at the fire department here, and just brought back a whole lot of memories. And it was, man, those were good times.
It was really good times.
Fun times. Yeah. And my kids got to, they were at the fire. It was one of those fire stations where families stopped in and, come in and they ate. It was, every door in a fire station
was open. Yeah. Come on in. And yeah, you're right. It blows my mind to think how quote unquote old Reagan and Corbin are now, because
they were just little babies.
You mentioned that you are a little older now and you do have an 8-year-old son. So what drives you crazy, man? Anything? You say that you're a lot more lenient now. Is there anything that drives you crazy and makes it hard to be a dad now?
It's, with my 2 oldest kids, there's so many, when you're that young, you're worried about paying the mortgage, the car payment, groceries. it's just a stressful time, and there's so much stuff that you miss, what kids say and things, that they do. I'm at the spot now where when my kid says something, it's, you stop. If he says something funny, you stop and you laugh at it.
Yeah.
It's, and we just have it with our whole family, with my wife's mom lives with us, and he's being raised by 3 adults. So the conversation that he hears now is totally different. So we get up every weekend. It's the same routine. My wife works for a corporation in the food industry, and she gets up I'm the first one that gets up. I make coffee, and then my wife comes in, she opens up her computer, and first thing she's looking at is yesterday's numbers. And my son, he grabs his iPad and he sits in what we call the great big green chair. And so everybody's doing their own thing. And my wife's office is just off the kitchen, and she's over there. You can hear the computer and stuff. And then as she's sitting in there, my son hollers and says, "Hey, how about some pancakes?" My 8-year-old. And he hollers at mom, says, "Will you fix me some pancakes?" And she says, "Yeah, give me a few minutes. I'll fix some pancakes." And so a few minutes goes by, he hollers it again. And right after that, she lets out a big "hell yeah." And, cuss words in our family. I mean, if you stump your toe, mash your finger, you can get, you may have a couple of those words come out. But she says "hell yeah." And I knew what she was talking about, that her numbers must have looked good yesterday. So I looked up real quick to see if my son heard it, and he didn't. So we just, I couldn't see my wife to see what her reaction was. And so a few minutes later, he hollers at my wife and says, "Hey, how about some pancakes?" Or no, my wife hollers at her, says, "Are you ready for those pancakes?" And my son says, "Hell yeah." So that kind of stuff, at my age now with an 8-year-old, at that time he was 7-year-olds when he said that. So you just laugh at that. You know what I mean? I don't know where he heard it, but we know where he heard it, but other words like that, we haven't heard the other words come out yet. So, it's fun being a dad. It's really fun being a dad and listening to those things and laughing at it. And when my wife come in the kitchen, she heard my son say, "hell yeah." And I give her the old thumbs up with a smirky, "Good job there, Mom.
That's my son. That's my son.
Yeah. Let's teach him some more words." So it's, that's where I'm at with being a dad. I just want to be the best dad I can. And what I said a few minutes ago, be intentional. It wasn't a whole lot of planning and being, time with my kids with my first 2, but it was there. It wasn't intentional. We did it, but now it is intentional. So everything that we do, if it's, spending time shooting basketball before I go to bed, that's intentional.
Yes.
The conversation that we're having while we're shooting basketball, that's intentional. The talk in the car by not turning on the radio, that's intentional.
Or not being on a device or a phone or iPad or anything.
That kind of stuff. So it's, I don't know if there's a complete recipe, if there's a professional parent out there, but, being a dad is, there's a lot of responsibility.
Last week's show with Willie and Neil Crass was on, and Willie hugged his kids and said bye, and he went to a revival, and the kids were going to work out, and they got in a terrible accident, and he lost his daughter, and so from there, you got to think, like you said, be intentional with the time with your kids and cherish it, and, tell your kids and tell your wife, you love them, because you never know when you're going to go 5 minutes down the road and something bad, terrible is going to happen like that. So
that's just precious moments that you got to take. You got to be intentional. So I keep repeating that word, but I think that's what I think about being a dad today. Is everything that I do, it's for a reason.
Yes. And Davis isn't coming by this just from the wife's side. I can promise you this, these little jokes and stuff, because I can remember our time at Harriman. I hadn't been there very long, but we had a big cookout, and we had hot dogs and hamburgers that we grilled, and families came. And a few weeks later, I think it was, I opened up my locker down in the bay to get something out, and here was this hot dog, just the weenie, that was just sitting in my locker. And I didn't have to ask very much, because I found out quickly who it was that had put it there. And so I don't remember. I think I may have put it in your turnout boot or something like that.
I think that hot dog was passed around a few times.
And then, so fast forward a few weeks later after that. So we're now 6 to 7 weeks since this hot dog's been cooked. And I'm at the fire academy going through some training, and I reach in my bunker coat pocket, and there's that daggum. So when Dan says that Davis, cracks these jokes and says this stuff, he's not coming just through Davis. I promise you this has been passed on with that intentional through Davis.
Yeah. It's, we had, like I said, we had some good times. Yeah. Ryan was in my wedding. That was, that goes down as, I guess people still celebrate, not just on my anniversary, but I think people celebrate the wedding day anniversary. It was, before my wife worked for the company she works for now, she worked for Victoria's Secret. And so we had a big blowout wedding, and I think most of all the firefighters thought that they were going to be these Victoria's Secret wing girls out there and everything. The wedding was packed. It was fun.
It was a great wedding. It was. I remember a little bit of it.
Yeah, you remember a little bit of it. I think a lot of people remember just a little bit of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. And Dan was in my wedding, and I didn't know it. The videographer had got him off to the side and was asking him some questions. Next thing I know, here's Dan pulling a
harmonica.
Yeah, you pull.
I don't even remember. I had a harmonica.
Yeah, you had a harmonica. You pulled out of your pocket, instead of answering the cameraman's question, you start playing harmonica.
I don't even remember that.
So we've had some real good times, and man, I tell you, like I said, he's been a huge inspiration to my life, and I think just through talking through Dan with the years and listen to how great of a dad he's been, and to his kids, and just been a big inspiration to help me become a better father too. So
for us, and I'm speaking for both of us, is a big part of our success are our wives.
Yes,
there's no way I could be the person I am without my wife. There was a turning point for me in my life when it come to being a better dad, when I really realized that my wife was just more than a wife. She was a resource. There was a lot of times where, if I had an issue that I need to work out or something, I didn't run it by her. I didn't talk to her about it, and it didn't cause us to have a bad marriage. It didn't cause us any separation, but what it didn't do was it didn't make us a strong team. And once I realized that, hey, we have to work together, we're stronger together, and and our son can see that. Our son can totally witness. I mean, me and my wife is my best friend. We don't make decisions independently about anything in our family. And once I started clicking on that, Ryan, man, it changed my whole world. It made me a better person and definitely a better parent.
And that's one thing from my growing up with my parents is they didn't communicate. Unfortunately, it led to divorce later on in life after I think 29 years of marriage. And I said from that point on, I will communicate with my wife. And so we have, when I say we have an open communication, open lines of communication all the way around. We're very open with each other. And like you said, I mean, we learned that in the fire service. You can't act as yourself. No. You're not good. You won't accomplish anything, but us as a team, us as a group, we will accomplish it.
Yeah. If you want to be a better dad, be a better husband.
Yes.
Your significant other, work with that, start on that relationship, make it stronger, and it'll definitely shore up everything else. Your personal life, your work life, and definitely with your kids. And so much about being a parent is not so much about what we say. It's about what they see. When kids see that your mom and dad's working on the same goals and they have the same values and they're on the same page, there's my Davis, my youngest, is definitely going to get more out of his mom. There's still those things out there,
Yes, for sure.
But when they see that dad kisses mom goodnight, he puts his arm around her and I've had to correct my son getting smart, saying stuff back to his mom, and I'll stop that in a heartbeat, because when you say something to her, you're saying it to me.
Exactly.
Whether it's positive or negative. And so,
and correcting that earlier, it helps to learn how to treat a woman as well.
Yeah.
Not just, if I can be disrespectful to my mother and nothing's going to be said or nothing be done, what am I going to do to other women in my life?
Exactly. Yeah. We call it Team King. Me and my wife, we're Team King, and sometimes we've used it sarcastically toward each other, and it works, and I can't emphasize the importance enough to, if you're trying to raise kids and you're got some issues with your marriage, and I'm not being a marriage counselor by any means, but it definitely makes a difference. It made a difference in my life.
And my kids are 3 and 6, and, let's just say Lincoln at 3 years old, I'm going to go ask my dad this. And I say, no, well, I can hear him. I'm going to go ask mom. Yeah. And so, like you said, you got to be a team. So whether you back up and support what your wife says or not, or what you think is good, whatever the other significant other says, you kind of got to roll with, because, if they see that they can separate you easy,
and they will,
they will.
Yeah. I usually ask the question, what'd your mom say? Yeah. Let's start from the base, that way I can determine my next, my answer. So it's something all the time, when you've got kids, but it's again, this is cool to talk about.
Exactly.
I would have never said earlier that I wish there had been a podcast, something where somebody could have told me that other dads are having issues. It's not just me.
So if, let's take that an aspect then. So a young couple comes to you, a young man comes to you, and he just got married or is thinking about getting married. And he's like, what's the most important thing that I can do as a husband? What's the best advice that you would give that young man for his new marriage or new relationship?
A game plan. I think everything is good. We live in a world of preparedness, in the fire service. And I think that you're just going into something as big as a marriage or having kids without a plan. I mean, you're not setting yourself up for failure, but you're giving yourself an opportunity to look more than likely fail in some way.
Yes.
So my advice would be take it serious and try to put a plan. Just don't put a plan, but put it in action. Be intentional. I keep using that word, but like I said, me and my wife come up with Team King, and it's a partnership.
Yes.
And so if you're going into a new marriage, there's a lot of sacrifices that you're going to have to make. If you have to put some things, that you may not get to do anymore. Some of the fun stuff you got to do your focus is family.
And that's, I would say a plan. I would say communication, and just try to put God first in your relationship too, first and foremost. And I wish that you would have gave me that information early. I'm very lucky that my wife has stayed with me, but I wasn't the best husband whenever we first got married. I was not a terrible husband, I don't think, from any aspect. No, I think working on something there to have a plan, to be prepared for anything that may come, a children's illness, a mother-in-law moving in with you, a job out of state, anything. I mean, you just got to be able to react and update that plan with whatever life throws at you.
Yeah. And you're good point about, you may not have as many friends as you want, but you can always lean on your, a church family. You can never go wrong by having your kids in church and finding a good church that you like and that you can grow in.
So what is, your son, Davis, he's 8. What do you want him to see most between you and your wife, as far as, cause he's going to grow up, he's probably going to get married and meet a significant other. So if you're thinking in your head, whenever he gets married, what is one thing that you try to do with your wife that you're like, man, I hope he sees this and accepts it and puts it into his marriage? Like, what's one thing that you may do with your wife from that end?
Respect and love. I mean, I think that's what and I do that a lot in front of my son, if it's where he sees me hug my wife, what true love is. Exactly. And how that a mom and a dad working together, that it can be successful in raising kids. So that, to me, it's just, it's pushing everything else out and focusing on what's the most important. And that's family and love and togetherness. And if you can concentrate on that in front of your kids, I think that's pretty impressive.
I agree. And that helps bring the whole family together, from all dynamics. You said that you can't count on anybody. If you got your family together and love is there first and foremost, then like you said, you're going to be able to rely on your family for sure.
Yeah. And kids are going to watch that. If they're not getting it at home, they're going to be looking for it somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Which I in my aspect, and don't want to go off on this too far, but I would think that, that's what more leads to pornography or anything of that nature. That they're going to look for that outlet. They're going to look for it. And they're going to find it somewhere. Yeah, we hear the term stable home, and if it's unstable, and you're raising kids in an unstable home, it's kind of hard to, it's kind of like if you're driving down the road and one of your tires isn't balanced, eventually you're going to have a blowout. And that's, and you can feel that unbalanced tire when you're driving down the road. So it's trying to keep the tires balanced and try to keep, stable and letting your kids grow up in an environment that's loving. That's something that not all families and not all parents and not all kids get to, have in their life. So I can say that where Dan is at his life now is kind of boggled my mind, and I'm very interested to hear where this has came from. But Dan, I would see at the fire hall, he would be reading books and looking on the computer quite a bit. But for those that don't know, Dan just wrote a book, his first book. It's called Charlie Visits the Fire Academy. And so I've got to ask Dan, where did this book writing come from? Where did this inspiration come from?
Well, I've got a little bit more time now to do some things. And it's just that book's been on my mind. I've written that book in my head probably 10 years ago. Charlie is a real character. Charlie is was real inspirational on getting our Tennessee Fallen Firefighters Memorial established through donations. So that the Charlie is based off that character, but the book was it's about our fire academy, and it was a family project, really. A lot of the stuff that was in the book we interviewed Davis. And so one of the things, for example, that's in the book was Charlie is at the fire academy and it's lunchtime. And so we asked my little boy Davis, if you was the fire academy, what would you want to do? He said, first thing, what are they having for lunch? I said, okay. I said, what do you want? He said, hamburgers. So Charlie's eating a hamburger at the fire academy. So it was just a fun book. I've never written a book before, but it was a family project. And again, I love the fire service, but it was really more about working with my son and him seeing, what we're capable of doing as a family. And I'll put my wife in it. She worked on it just as much too. So I'm proud of it, and we're moved on to the next book.
Exactly. And I was very, very overwhelmed, but very, very humbled. Dan contacted me and he said, hey man, how would you feel about me and my family writing a book about your kids? And I, basically almost busted out into tears because, it just touched me so much. And so now he's working on a book about Kennedy and Lincoln. And
yeah, and it's fun. Your two kids are awesome. And Kennedy's the star of the book. And with her, she's got kind of a cute little attitude. But yeah, it was fun. And hopefully the whole inspiration is your toughness, your family's toughness. It was really inspiring me to write the book. When things happen in our lives, like what's happened to you, there's a lot of people that are faced with adversity, but a lot of times people don't ask, what can I do? What can I do to help the situation? And that's what you guys have done. You said, what can I do? And you did it. You we're on a podcast. You've got a foundation. It's not just sitting back and feeling sorry for yourself. So me to write, my contribution for the book can't compare to what you guys are doing to help the cause.
But it's going to end up being a huge platform, I do believe, for the foundation and about Kennedy and Lincoln and spreading awareness about their disease. And that's mine and my wife's motto. Above anything else, we can raise all the money we want to for a cure. We can do anything, tell everybody. But with awareness comes a cure. We never know that one day that either we're going to meet that doctor or that researcher, or, you know, that when that book finally publishes and comes out, you know, what doctor, what researcher is going to be reading that to their child, and can come that way as well. So, from me and my family's point of view, just thank you so much for doing that. And, we're very humbled and very thankful for it.
It was fun. I mean, it's, I enjoyed doing it, and hopefully we'll have that book out in the next few months, where I'm sure it'll be.
COVID's kind of pushed it back.
Yeah, that's kind of changed a lot of things a little bit, but it's coming. Hopefully it'll be out in the next couple of months, and you're sitting here talking about it on the Dad Show.
Charlie visits Fire Academy. Kennedy, she absolutely loves it. Lincoln, he's just like, oh, it's a firefighter, and you know, that's cool. But Kennedy, I read it to her often. She loves the book, and I think that your kids will too. So, a little bit about Charlie, man. What's you said he was a real character.
He is a real character. He's retired now, and like I said, that's a lot of the funding for the Fallen Firefighters Memorial here in Tennessee is donations. And then, you know, it's one of those, we work in an industry where we count line of duty deaths, and they just seem like they always stay around 100 a year. So it's you know, like I said, it's just my way of giving back, and it was fun to do. It's fun to say, hey, I'm an author. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's awesome. So all the proceeds from this, if I'm not mistaken, correct me, goes to the Fallen Firefighters Memorial.
And the National Fallen Firefighters.
And the National Fire, both at Tennessee and in Maryland, right?
Exactly, yep.
So that's awesome. So any other plans for any more books coming up?
Your books, it's on the list. And we're looking at a couple of other things that... another kid's book, and then already started the process of my first nonfiction book to help the fire service. So I won't go too much into that, but it's exciting times. You know, it's grateful to have an opportunity and to be in a place in my life where not just me, but my family supports it.
Yeah, and I'm sure Davis he's like, Dad, when are we going to do some more books?
Yeah, and, he's all about writing the books. Yeah. The one thing with Davis was that we don't have or doesn't have that my other two kids did. My other two kids, as we talked about, they were in the fire station. So it was, you know, our jobs now, our kids can't come into the fire station like we used to, but, you know, he knows we're in the fire service, and he loves Charlie. Went to the fire academy.
I could see that being that's awesome, because that's, you know, a lot of families you see sitting around on devices, or, you know, I know from my family, we've got a rule that no devices at the dinner table. So we try our hardest, when I'm not on shift, to sit down every night and have dinner as a family. And the rule is no devices. I mean, obviously, if you get an emergency phone call, then, you know, something like that. But as far as just sitting there scrolling through Facebook, or the kids watching a video, or something trying to keep them occupied and not bothering mom and dad, we don't do. That's one of our rules. So I could see Davis and Carrie at home, and, you know, that being a good family.
We have devices at our house too. I mean, Davis is all about devices. He got a phone for Christmas this year, so it rang the other day, and I answered it, and it was the next door neighbor looking for Davis. So what
about me?
What about me? Yeah, what do you got to talk to Davis about? The next door neighbor's retired, and so it's not like it was a kid calling. This was. Everybody in the whole neighborhood knows David. Because he's calling them.
Oh, yeah, he's calling. So I need somebody to talk to.
Yeah. Come get me.
And so where I'm going with that is, you know, that's, we talked about being a good husband and a good father, but the main part of that is spending time with your family. You can't never get that back. And I know that our world is becoming more technologically advanced, and more stuff's coming from the internet and those aspects, but that just quality time spent with your family, whether it's dinner every night, whether it's, you know, helping to write a book, or whether it's waiting on mom to make some pancakes.
Yeah.
You know, it's, that's just that quality time you'll never be able to go back and grab in life. And, you know, my kids are 3 and 6, so they are very young, but I still find myself, pushing time away from them to go try to help make money to make ends meet for the family. But, you know, in reality, I shouldn't be doing that, and should be trying to take more time with them and spend more time with them. Because as you can you can say now that Reagan and Corbin are grown and out of the house, basically, you're like, man, where'd my babies go?
Yeah. It's, and that time flies too. So I'm always going to be a dad, whether they're in the house or older, but to make that, have that influence that we really want them to succeed in life, you just have a short window. So there's so many distractions. When I was growing up, there just wasn't that many distractions, and it's harder and harder to take that time and to pull that stuff away from them and be the dad that we should be.
So you can pick up the book at the firemandan.com. Also, Dan just gave me some great news. It's going to be put out in all major bookstores and as well as on Amazon. So be looking for that coming out. Charlie Visits the Fire Academy, written by Dan King. It's an awesome book. My kids love it. So go support Dan, go support the Firefighters Memorial. And so Dan has kind of been pretty humble through this podcast. You know him as a dad, you know him as a husband, and you know him as a book writer. But Dan has a extensive career in the fire industry. Also, he's very intelligent, very educated. Probably one of the most certified individuals that I've ever come in contact with throughout the fire service. And so Dan, like I said earlier, Dan was my captain at Harriman. Dan left Harriman and went to a place called, it's Industrial Wacker, a German-based company right up the road here, and was the chief. And not only was the chief, but Dan achieved a huge goal there that most people will never be able to say that they did, and that was started a whole fire department from scratch, meaning there was no fire station, there was no firefighters, there was no fire trucks, it was just, there was no SOGs, SOPs, anything. And Dan had to start all this from scratch for what, 2 years by yourself completely?
Yeah, right close to 3. Yeah, it was just a bunch of dirt clods out in the field.
And when I say by himself, I mean literally by himself. He didn't have, an assistant chief at the time or other captains, other firefighters helping him. And Dan done all this basically. I'm sure, some outside help, but as far as hired and working for the same company in the fire department, Dan was the man at that time. And so I'm going to just let him give a little background on what it took to get that fire station up and running.
I've just been grateful. It's thanks for those kind words, but I've just been in the right place at the right time, and God's been good to me. And so I worked in a city fire department and for right at 15 years, and had this opportunity to move over on the industrial side, which was something that I didn't know that much about, but had a great opportunity to build a fire station and work for a great company. It was a global company, learned a whole lot. When you get to hire all your firefighters, and create the culture, I didn't inherit any,
Exactly. Yeah.
It was what we created there, and it was pretty cool. And that's where I've stayed on the industrial side ever since, I went to work there. I work for a different company now, but I'm still working on the industrial side, and it's fun times.
But I can't imagine what you had to go through to get to that point. I mean, we've both been in different fire departments, and like you said, to just go in and accept the culture that's there, and then to be able to have the opportunity to create that culture and be like, man, if I complain about this, I'm complaining about myself.
Yeah, you can't do it. You're exactly right. Everything that you own it all. And, but no, I'm proud of it. And I'm proud of the people that work there and are continuing. The culture is still the same. And, those guys are just, I called them an all-star fire department, and still do. I still keep in touch with some of them, and just great friends. And it was a time in my life. A whole lot of times I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. There was a lot of doubt in it, but once I come through, and I'm a much better firefighter, leader because of it.
So that's an amazing feat that he accomplished there, and obviously great for the resume. But Dan's got some other stuff going on as well. And so he's got the Fireman Dan podcast, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's 360 Size Up's the name of the podcast. As we discussed there a few minutes ago, I've had the opportunity to work in the fire service and do some things that that not many people have gotten to do. So I've taken this opportunity to help the fire service as a whole with some of the stuff that that I've learned throughout the years. And we have a lot of leadership discussions on our podcast. We have a lot talk training and tactics, and we talked values. The fire service there's a lot of great leaders in the fire service, and a lot of times those voices aren't heard. And so we try to get those people on our podcast and get them out there and just try to help not only the fire service industry, but we have other listeners. We have a lot of other people outside the fire service that listen to our content.
And you're just great leadership content for sure. Dan's, like I said, he's very educated. I'm sure that he's putting a lot of nuggets in his podcast that he's not letting loose here, but
yeah.
But no, that's go listen to Dan's podcast, 360 Size Up, or visit him at www.thefiremandan.com. The 360 Size Up with the Fireman Dan podcast. It's available on all major podcast outlets. Dan, I want to thank you so much for having you on the show, and I hope that our listeners will go and connect with you. And I greatly, greatly appreciate the nuggets that you put in here to help our listeners become better fathers, better husbands, and better men all the way around.
I appreciate you having me on the show. I appreciate your passion. This has been pretty cool. Good luck with your podcast. I'm sure it's going to be a hit. There's a lot of dads out there.
There's a lot of dads out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that need dads out there.
So. Yeah. So I think it's a great topic, and I look forward to listening to the next show.
I want to thank you, Dan. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
For the rest of you, links to all of Dan's stuff will be in the description below. I want to thank you for being with us. God bless every one of you, and I love you. Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to the Dad Show podcast. Please like, review, and subscribe.